So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, here we are, live. First of all, Erika, how are you? It's been a couple months now.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah, unfortunately, I was out of the country for the last one, but I am doing good now. So
You know, I just checked, and our first Eric with Erika was on March 24th, 2020.
oh, we missed the anniversary.
We didn't, but that's okay. But I just want to say we've been doing this for over a year now.
Yeah. It's been a good time. It's been a consistently good time. Although, it's also been painful at times.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. This whole Eric with Erika, and Kent with Bent. My Tuesdays are always a little love-hate. I have a love-hate relationship with Tuesdays now.
Very love-hate. I'm sure your liver has a love-hate too.
Oh my goodness. So first I want to say we did get so it looks like we got two super chats, but I've only been able to capture one because for some reason, when I go live, YouTube is like, oh, those pre-show super chats, you don't need those. It's like, I would like them. But the one that the one that I did manage to get was from Carrie Bronson for $5, who says, the infinite depths of the void have more than enough room to absorb your tension and your anxiety. Find your peace there. And yes, that is true. The Church of the Void does welcome you, and you can cast all your tension and anxiety into the void, which is infinite and therefore may absorb all of it.
Yeah, I do like the idea of a crushing nothingness.
There you go. So let's see. We also have, I do have a follow-up, which is also going to make it into a community post, probably tomorrow or something. But as some of you might know, actually most of you, it got a lot of views. I did recently make an apology because a fundraiser that I had helped support, actually on an Erika with Erika, I don't know if you remember, but I donated proceeds from Super Chats from one of our Erika with Erikas to this fundraiser. And it was for a cancer fundraiser. And it turns out that person didn't have cancer. But I myself, as well as other people, have confirmed that they have received emails from GoFundMe themselves saying that GoFundMe is going to be transferring the full donation, including the cut that GoFundMe takes, back to the donors, because Ilya Moon, whose fundraiser it was, apparently, according to GoFundMe, has in fact returned the full sum of the fundraiser. So all those funds are apparently available. If you don't get that email, I would double check to make sure you did donate to that particular fundraiser, and then email GoFundMe. And I don't know what else to do. If you still have trouble, you can try to contact me, and I have her lawyer's contact information. So if needs be, we can do that. And we have Vandali 1998 for $5 who says, Erika, you need to finish your time traveling. You need to finish your time traveling human fossil joke since it cut off on the rerun when I got to catch it after the podcast. Uh-oh. Your time traveling human fossil.
Oh my god.
Oh, but he sent to Mothra though, so we had to drink for the Mothra.
Okay, right, true. Okay, so I thought that joke made it through. It was hilarious, if I do say so myself. But I don't know if repeating it that might set it up for failure. We were discussing. Okay, the context, if you'll remember, Dapper was I was watching this movie Synchronic with Luke, and it turned into this time traveling movie where you take a drug and you can go back in time. And I turned to Luke in the middle of the movie, and I was like, "Can you imagine? Like, you go back in time, you're like in the Cretaceous, and you die, and the Creationists finally, at long last, get their human with dinosaurs fossil." And then I believe it was Walker in the side chat who was like, yeah, imagine being found by Mark Armitage. I was like, here's how it would go if you got found by Mark Armitage. It's like a sweltering day in Hell Creek, right? And Mark Armitage is out there, and he's scraping through the dirt, and he dusts away some of soil, and all of a sudden he sees, the head of your femur, right? Because you've been killed off way back in the Cretaceous, and he uncovers this femur, and he's marveling at it. He leans down, starts manhandling it, tries to pick it up, breaks it in half, and goes, holy shit, what a gorgeous Triceratops femur. That get cut off? I thought that was so funny.
Ironically, human femurs look a fair bit more like dinosaur femurs than many other femurs in the world. Mammal femurs and dinosaur femurs have some similarities that they're convergent, but they're marked. So
Perhaps not a triceratops, though.
maybe
That might be
maybe he thinks it's like a Thescelosaurus, a much smaller ornithopod.
yeah, perhaps, but I think you're giving him a bit too much credit.
He only knows the big name dinosaurs.
He knows the big ones. That's for sure.
All right, so let's see. As of everyone might remember, last time we left off talking about Neanderthals and how much they were and were not like humans. I think Eric still has a little bit of that to go, but we're going to go over the drinking rules, as well as stating what we're drinking. Erika, what you got?
I'm drinking a grapefruit White Claw.
Nice. Ooh, grapefruit.
Very
I do like grapefruit. That is a good fruit. I am drinking one of the classic Michael Scott cocktails. Now, you might be thinking, Dapper, is it a Scotch and Splenda? Tastes like Splenda, gets you drunk like Scotch? Nope. Nor is it a one of everything. I am drinking the infamous Orvandjuska, which is
beautiful.
Orange juice and vodka, which is something that Michael Scott thought up. And can you believe no one had ever done that before?
I can't believe it.
No.
He's such a genius.
So
What an intelligent...
yeah, well, so basically the other day I was getting booze, and I usually get some rum, but this time I got vodka. And then I was in the grocery store today, and I was thinking, I've got vodka, I might as well buy orange juice, because come on, that's a classic.
Yeah, you're like, me as well. I love Michael Scott, his he knows exactly what he's doing, but in another very real way, he had no idea what he was doing.
Right. Although actually I did see the How to Drink episode on the One of Everything, and apparently it just tastes like licorice. That's it. So if you like licorice, like if you like Jägermeister, or if you like other anise flavored, like Ouzo or something, you'll probably like a One of Everything. There you go.
Also, really want to know how you manage to actually drink with those tiny little arms.
Oh, I have a special drinking apparatus that I don't worry about it, man. It's just, look, how do dinosaurs drink that? I mean, how do birds drink? There you go.
Don't put too much thought into it.
I have to dip my entire mouth into a horse trough full of orange juice and vodka.
It's enormous. Also, Carrie wants to know if we lost sound. Did we lose sound?
We shouldn't have. I'm seeing sound is going out.
I mean, I hear you just fine. Okay, Bobby says no. Thank you, Bob.
Dinosaurs can't use straws, covert cuttlefish, so that's...
Oh, don't you require lips?
Well, so you require specifically muscular lips. You have to be able to actually form a seal, which requires muscle action. So
mammals are big on the lips.
yeah, it's for suckling.
It is for suckling.
Which is ultimately what you're doing with a straw. You're using the exact same motion and muscles. So anyway, we are going to go over the drinking rules. So let's see. We drink, as we already saw, whenever someone super chats with one of the kaiju emojis, which includes both Mothra and Godzilla. We also drink whenever we hear either of those two sounds come off. Those are mostly random. We also will drink whenever Eric Hovind gets something right, without it being a reference that he's just quoting someone, right? He has to actually get it on his own, and that does usually happen, just not very often. We also drink...
It's rarer than you think.
Yeah.
It's rarer than you think.
We also laugh whenever he tells a joke that doesn't land. Usually what that means is we only notice it's a joke about a half a sentence later, and we're like, oh, wait a minute. It was supposed to be a joke, and then, okay.
That one, on the contrary, that one is far more common.
Yes, it is. We also drink whenever it's just so stupid we kind of have to, like when you put up our Darwinius macelli and label it as RT, ARTY.
That was absolutely incredible. That is up there on my list of dumbest things that I've seen on a video. I can't believe no one caught it. You have to think, multiple pairs of eyes went over the presentation slides, and no one was like, wait a second.
Yeah, no one looked at that and was, I don't know. Yeah, that's...
no one saw it and was concerned, which, troubles me greatly.
Yeah, it's kind of baffling. Let's see. We also drink whenever... Now, this is more often a Kent Hovind thing, but we do also drink whenever we get an anecdote that almost certainly didn't happen. So sometimes,
Oh, that's
especially,
unbelievable.
yeah, we've been doing that for Kent because he does a lot of those. He'll say, "One time I was on this plane with a professor from Berkeley University, and I said, oh, sorry, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a professor at Berkeley University." And he goes on, and this guy tries to explain the Big Bang, except he explains it the way Kent Hovind understands it, which is not the way anyone would actually explain the Big Bang. And so we're just like, all right, he's told enough of these, so anytime we get an anecdote that didn't happen, we're taking a drink for it.
Can you imagine, you're checking into your flight, right? And you like scan your boarding pass and walk down the flight path or the flight gangway. You're like putting your luggage up above the deal, and then you see the Hawaiian shirt and you realize who it is you're sitting next to.
Oh, well, here's the thing, though.
Solid 2.5 hours of just Kent.
According to Kent Hovin's filing, where he decided to sue the government for $600 million, one of the damages he alleges is that while before he went to prison, he was receiving around 3 requests per day to speak at various churches. He's now receiving no such requests. So apparently he isn't flying anymore.
Poor Kent. He should have thought of that before the tax dodging. What is it, structuring? Isn't that what he was busted for?
He was busted for structuring, as well as failure to file income taxes, failure to withhold payroll taxes, and he was also later charged with mail fraud and tampering, I believe. But those were dismissed because of a hung jury, because a Kent Hovind supporter managed to get on the jury and hang the jury, and they just opted not to retry.
A Kent Hovind supporter managed to make it on the jury. That feels like a Dinosaur Adventureland psyop to me.
I know. All right. Well, we're gonna read this super chat, and we're gonna get into it. We have another $5 super chat from Vandelli1998, who says, "I will try to get through this video with Erika, since apparently it's so hard to watch her for some reason." I think that was sarcastic with the winky face. And then we have a Godzilla emoji. So take a drink.
It's very difficult, but fortunately, I'm cold sore free right now.
Oh, yes. So let's see. Mr. Wilford for 199 says, "Bets on if Kent is on the no-fly list." I doubt it. So none of the crimes that he committed were violent. So usually, like, white-collar crimes like tax evasion aren't going to get you on the no-fly list.
Yeah, I like to imagine that Kent, though, went to, like, a national park and, like, just piled a ton of rocks for free into his bag and then tried to, like, lug them back, and they, they're scanning it through the deal, and they're like, what is this large mass in here? What if it's, like, a bomb? And then they're like, "Excuse me, Mr. Hovind," and he's like, "Oh, I was told that there was no limit to as many rocks as you could take."
Yeah, by the way, guys, you're not technically allowed to take rocks from national parks in the U.S. I don't know.
You are not.
Yeah.
That is a hard to follow rule when so many of the rocks are so cool.
Yes. Now, are you likely to have the book thrown at you if you take a small rock? No, probably not. But don't just go there thinking you can just sample the local geology and just walk away with it. But anyway, let's get going with Eric. So remember, Erika just said that Neanderthals have language. To which we had responded, I mean, prove it. How do you know? But maybe.
They were as human
God.
as human could be, living during the Ice Age, struggling to survive in the cold, frozen landscape.
So, there I want to say, okay, look, first of all, Neanderthals are Homo neanderthalensis, right? Sister species to Homo sapiens. So, it's sort of like marveling that, like, I don't know, coyotes and wolves have a lot in common. It's like, well, yeah, you would expect.
Dude, struggling to survive in the Arctic is like the prerequisite to be human, then we're adding a lot of critters to the list.
Oh, and for one in Mr. Wilford says, "I stole 5 pounds of rocks from Mount St. Helens."
That's so many rocks!
Or just one very heavy rock.
Yeah, but he said rocks. He said
plural.
plural.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Man,
I would never incriminate myself. I have certainly never taken a rock from a place the rock should not be taken from. Ever. I would never do that.
You would never be a rock thief. All right. But the other thing, of course, is like, Erika, as I know you would probably be better able to elaborate on, there were also significant differences between Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis, right?
Sure, and I'm sure we're about to get into that. I mean, that's the thing. You can talk about differences in culture, you can talk about differences in morphology, or you can talk about differences in genetics. There's a reason why the consensus is that they are a fully separate species and not Homo sapiens neanderthalensis. They are fully separate species from us, 99.7% similar genetically, a bunch of unique novel traits in the skull and in the postcrania, and a completely different culture in some aspects. They approached us on the technological advancements. They didn't quite reach it. You know, there were a handful of things that were entirely unique to humans. One of many is proposed to be by like Pat Shipman and associates, the domestication of dogs from wolves. So,
Neanderthals didn't get puppers?
They didn't get pups, not that we know of. I suppose it's possible, but we find, you know.
I mean, I'll be honest. Would Homo sapiens even really want to be here if Canis lupus familiaris wasn't around?
No, neither would I want to be here if Phyllis Sylvestris was not here.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
According to the biblical timeline, the Ice Age followed the global flood and covered most of the northern latitudes with snow and ice.
I don't remember that part in the Bible. Do you?
What verse was that? According to the biblical model. Yeah.
I'm taking a drink for the biblical Ice Age that isn't in the Bible.
Yeah, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and then lo, after the flood, the glaciers hath processed across the land.
See, the great thing here is like, okay, so what's happening honestly is creationists have realized that like there's just no way they can convince their constituents that there wasn't some kind of glacial period in the relatively recent past on the scale of like the history of the planet. So they have to put an ice age somewhere. But if
it's the same thing as the dinosaurs, right? Like everyone seems to forget the era when creationists were dragged kicking and screaming into accepting that dinosaurs were real animals.
Yes, they weren't just bones planted by Satan to trick you.
Yeah, everyone conveniently forgets that arc, like that anime arc that the creationists went through, thanks to some serious PR by the 70s and 80s creationists of renown, if you will.
Well, they've also memory hold their entire rejection of any kind of movement of continents, right? Because it used to be like, even in like the 60s, 70s, creationists were like, no, the continents never moved. All this continental drift and plate tectonics, that's just nonsense. There's nothing about that in the Bible. And now they're like, oh no, creationists have predicted the moving continents racing under the floodwaters all this time. And it's like, dude, I own books from back when you were like, nope, that's just crazy talk. So,
oh god,
creationists, they memory hole a lot.
Yeah, the revisionism of early creationism is hard at work these days. The current, mind you, the current rewriting is that creationists have always been cool with nested hierarchies. Always. But creationism predicts nested hierarchies. Have you not heard, Dapper?
It would have been nice to actually hear about that since before nested hierarchies were found.
Yeah, one might call that a prediction. Or, maybe this is kind of crazy thinking on my end, but maybe in the many decades of like white knuckle gripped admonishing of even the idea of nested hierarchies from these guys. It wasn't until genetics came out that everyone was like, and really hardcore set all of this in stone, that they were like, ew, maybe we ought to find a way to go with the flow with this, So
yeah, well, so that's one of the things about creationism is it's basically like how much of science from 30 years ago do we have to accept because even other creationists will call us crazy if we don't?
Well, and that's when you enter into the realm, like the absolute absurdity of the fringe of the fringe of the fringe, right? Because it's like you've got the fundamentalists, and then of the fundamentalists you have the young Earth creationists, who are fringe among the fundamentalists. Mm-hmm. And then among the young Earth creationists you have the fringe young Earth creationists, like, for instance, our friend Walt Brown, who's just shunned from the that. I believe Kent falls into that as well.
Yeah, Kent.
I don't think Eric does though. Stayed on the good side enough.
Yeah, I think Eric. Well, I think for Eric, he just doesn't speak very much about the very specifics of how the flood's supposed to happen, and I think it's to avoid that question. It's like, oh, do you like hydroplate? Do you like catastrophic plate tectonics? A word I can't say apparently. Also, for $5 from Carrie Bronson, we have the dinosaurs were created by Satan to mislead us. It goes deeper than you think. Oh, he didn't just bury dinosaur bones. He actually made the dinosaurs.
We're through the looking glass here,
Yeah.
people. Who could forget the I can't for the life of me remember which many creationists proposed it, but I believe the dinosaurs being Nephilim was also thrown out there at some point.
Oh, I don't remember
bonkers
hearing that, but that doesn't sound so far-fetched that I wouldn't believe that it had happened. Of course,
it really found a allyship in a weird portion of the furry community because the Nephilim mated with human women. So you can imagine that created odd lines to be drawn.
for $4.99, Mr. Wilford says, Jensen is it Jensen or Jensen? I hear both.
I don't know why anyone has ever said Jensen. It's Jensen. I don't know.
But the thing is, the people who I hear say Jensen tend to actually be creationists. So I feel like...
Burnham says Jensen, but I've heard Jensen with in interviews with Ken, sorry.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think maybe Nathaniel himself is a bit too timid to be like, hey, here's how you say my name.
Okay, Nathaniel, if you're ever on the off chance watch this, please assert yourself at least enough that people call you by the proper name. Have that much self-respect, please. But anyway, I'm gonna go with Jensen on this one. Says that so Mr. Wilford says, Jensen says they always predicted nested hierarchies, amphibious vehicles. Please ignore creationists who said creationism predicts the opposite. Yeah, which of course it does, because when we look at things that have been intelligently designed, you actually can't fit them into objective hierarchies. You can see it in created vehicles, you can see it in tool sets, you can see it, interestingly enough, people create languages and they don't fall into nested hierarchies, whereas natural languages do, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
In fact,
they know what's into the creationism behind the curtain.
Yep. In fact, actually, if you want to make things that were designed with a nested hierarchy, that has to be one of your design goals. So, for instance, I have the speculative evolution project going, right? And one of the rules is, in order to create a creature, it has to be plausibly descended from an earlier ancestor. Which means that the project gets a nested hierarchy. But if I didn't have that rule, it almost certainly wouldn't get that nested hierarchy. You have to come up with that as your implicit goal as part of your design. For $5, we also have from Vandalia 1998, the dinos were giant demons. The third season finale of Buffy proved that. I mean...
The thing is... Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm not going to argue with the season 3 finale of Buffy.
You wouldn't want to.
No.
But it's pretty interesting that it's like, this would be such an easy thing to disprove or violate, right? This concept of a nested hierarchy, it's problematic because everything works with it. Everything works within that framework. So
yeah. We're going to hit play. We're going to hit play.
Where are all the femboy YECs? Where are they?
I think that they just get made fun of.
I guess. I think that there's a handful that we know who, with a little effort, could fall into that category.
Oh, they just need to drink a little bit more soy milk, right?
A little more soy milk, dress a little better. It's doable, is what I'm saying. It's doable.
All right.
The Neanderthal people lived in this barren region not 250,000 years ago, but within 4,000 years ago. And they managed to survive.
What do you think? Do you think around the same time that the pyramids were being built, there were Neanderthals running around Europe, Erika?
Yeah, dude. I love the characterization of this barren region, too, because at least according to the latest work on Neanderthals, their range is impeccably massive. They extended down to the Mediterranean, like in these very lush, almost like deciduous jungle-type conditions. They were in woodlands, they were in the steppes, they were in the far north, they were in the far east. They were everywhere, pretty much, besides Africa and North America. So they were really getting around. And the barren region, the idea of this, oh god, the hulking Neanderthals struggling to make their way. It's like, nah, like they survived a lot long. Like they have much longer existence.
I'm sure Ice Age southern Italy was just a nightmare to live in.
Oh yeah. Oh god, Mr. Wilford. Yeah. Southern Italy would have been quite nice. I mean, they oh golly, I can't remember the name of the cave system to save my life, but it literally overlooks the Mediterranean, and it's just in the summer times during the even during like our larger glacial intro progressions. I think that would be the word. Glacial advancements when the ice ages were at their heights. Southern Italy was still decent to be in.
Yeah.
I mean, even when the going was rough, these guys who were living in the more southerly conditions, they did okay for themselves. And they were pretty nomadic. They knew how to use fire, of course. They knew how to exploit different resources at different times of year. They were by no means like idiots or anything like that, but the barren wastes is just a poor characterization. But what do you expect from something like this?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, like, it was supporting a diverse range of megafauna. It couldn't have been that barren. They had to eat something.
Well, can and did. I mean, we spoke about this last time, but Neanderthals had an enormous caloric requirement. Like, their metabolism was bonkers fast, to the point that when they killed and butchered animals, they butchered them on site and took with them, like, the highest energy contents of the animal, so, like, the organs, and less interested in, like, the leaner meats. Yeah. So it's like, these guys really relied on the herds, and they had that down to, like, a science, moving about during that time period.
All right, let's get a little bit more in here.
Survive quite well. In fact, caves would have been a great, ideal place for them to live during the Ice Age, with a constant moderate temperature year-round, providing great protection from the elements.
I'm actually I'm going to take a drink, because it is broadly the case that caves are a great place to live in a place that has a highly fluctuating temperature and like temperature extremes and stuff. Show me
a sedentary Neanderthal population, then.
Well, yeah, so it's a hesitant drink, because it's like, it's not wrong that caves are a great place to hang out in the winter or even in the heights of summer. However, no, they weren't just permanently living in caves, so it's like, you got part of it right?
Well, I just want to drink, so I'll drink.
That's fair.
Okay, continue.
That's true. It would make sense. They did look a little bit different, though, from today's average, if there is such a thing as an average. They had.
What do you mean, if there is such a thing as an average? You add all the measurements up and you divide them by the number of measurements you took. How could there not be? Whatever. You know what? I don't even care. Math's stupid.
This is a great freeze frame right here. That was a really good freeze frame. Not this one. The
earlier one, yeah.
Heads, and their bodies were slightly shorter and stockier.
But
or are those? That is true.
I'll drink.
But who are we to judge?
What do you mean, who are we to judge? Who is judging? That's one of the things that baffles me about these guys, is they're the one who are making all these judgment calls about the things that scientists are saying about, say, Neanderthals, and whereas the scientists are like, I am not saying that it is bad to have, like a triangular torso or to be shorter with thicker limbs.
Also, girl, I'm sorry. A Neanderthal would, in all likelihood, not find you very attractive. The Neanderthal males were very interested because they had similar, if not less, sexual dimorphism than we do. You do not have the proper sloping brow, broad-shouldered, and like robust body that would be required to court a Neanderthal male.
I'm sure she's very disappointed.
You gotta be sturdy if you're trying to keep up with these guys.
Well, she doesn't look like she spent too many summers trudging across Northern Europe, so...
No, and she's probably not flushing too much game during hunting either.
No, she's probably been spending a lot more time doing things like, I don't know, lounging and maybe occasionally going for a run on the treadmill.
Enjoyable human things. And to be fair, we are the better persistence hunters. We're much, more slender than our Neanderthal cousins were. But that being said, let's not pretend like this is a unrequited love thing,
All right, here we go.
If you look at the diversity of body structures we humans possess, okay, here's a photo of a Peruvian, a Bengali, a man from the Solomon Islands, a German, a Congolese, an Inuit.
Let her finish the sentence.
And here's a Neanderthal.
All right, so I noticed all of these Homo sapiens have no brow ridge, or at least much reduced brow ridge. Also, for $4.99 from Mr. Wilford, even the most ideal rates don't support significant cave formation in about 4,000 years. They'd only be free real estate if they were older. Well, there you go. That's another problem for this 4,000-year time frame. But I'm also
formation.
So I can, just glancing at this one view, right? We're only getting, the front view. which would be nice to get front and side views, but that might reveal even more differences, right? But I'm already getting that
Canon
there's...
would.
Yeah. I'm already getting, like, there's significant difference with the shape of the brow ridges, the shape of the forehead, the shape of the jaw, the size of the nares. I mean, am I off on this?
No, you're correct. And another big one here that should be like screaming to pretty much everyone is the actual the forehead's recession. So they don't have the tall vault of the forehead that then comes backwards. They have an upward slope. But if you look at all of these humans, they've got almost double that forehead height, and that's because humans have these massive globular skull shapes.
Yeah.
You know, they're almost teardrop down the back, and that includes these big, boisterous frontal lobes that are right up here at the front. And part of losing that brow ridge, it has been proposed by some, is to help make room for this massive forehead of ours. If you were to turn it to the side, you would also see that Neanderthals lack, or rather they possess, we lack it, a retromolar gap. So they have a gap in between their molars and the ramus of the jaw, and they also lack a chin. They don't have like a weak chin, they essentially they lack it.
Right.
In some papers they will use the word like receding, or occasionally you'll see the word weak used, but it's generally understood that what a chin is, like to be considered a true chin, these guys they don't possess it.
Yeah.
So, and if you turn it to the back, it would be nice too to see the actual back of the skull, because you would see a very unique structure there as well. They have what's called an occipital bun, which is like a hard knob, right, kind of at the base back here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is a very convenient picture to choose. You also notice the shape of the orbits is very unique. You've already mentioned the zygomatic themselves, but the actual orbits have this much more kind of squarish and backward shape. I don't know how to describe it properly. And depending on which Neanderthal we're looking at, which population, they had differences in prognathism too. So usually the ones from kind of the eastern areas were more orthognathic than we are, and the ones from the west were more prognathic.
So basically...
Drinking,
okay, that's fair. So it's great that they're like, oh, Neanderthals just fit neatly within, Homo sapiens diversity, and then they show us 6 human skulls. They're all much more close to each other than any of them are to the Neanderthal skull. It's like, see?
Could we show a Neanderthal profile next to a human? Is that something we'd be capable of doing? Because I think it's really important to illustrate that.
We probably could. I would have to bring that up. So let me see what I can pull up. Give me a second.
If I can screen share it, I've got one.
Oh, that should be that shouldn't be too much of a problem. I should be able to get that. So if you screen share, it'll end up being a little small on the stream, but it should still be fine. Let me know when you have that up.
That's okay. I've got it.
All right, give me just a second.
Should I open it in a separate tab?
I don't. Well, I'm not seeing your screen share actually right now.
Oh, I have to click it probably.
Yeah.
Now I should be sharing it.
Oh, I see that now.
Okay, can you see this? Is this something everyone can see?
It is currently loading, but they should be seeing it as soon as I'm able to.
Okay.
Oh, it's still loading. That's a problem.
We don't have to do it. I was just thinking, because I've got the picture right here, and it's like pretty stunning just how unique these two organisms.
Try screen sharing again one more time, and if it loads, then we'll go with it. I think the bandwidth from you is not the greatest at the moment.
Okay, my stream is still running. We've paused this preview to save you resources. Yeah, I heard a little ka-thunk, like it's not working.
Nah, it doesn't seem to be. But actually,
I'm going to put it in the side chat then.
Okay.
I'll just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Everyone can go and take a little look for themselves.
All right. We'll continue on with the video for a bit then. They might actually do some kind of profile thing. I don't know.
They are very different.
Fingers
Okay,
crossed.
Neanderthal had larger brains than the average human today.
That is true. That is tech. Yeah. So I'll take a drink.
Now, earlier we saw how, according to evolution, a larger brain is evidence of more human intelligence. But according to evolution now,
it's so if the brain shape is consistent and the body size is consistent, then I guess, yeah, kind of. But, like, it's more than just brain big, therefore smart. It's at first, like, order approximation. If, you know, you have a thing with a gigantically larger brain and a similar sized body, yeah, it's probably smarter. But there's a lot of buts going in there.
Well, there's a huge, massive factor that's not being appreciated here, which is the organization of the brain itself.
Right.
So various regions that tend to be emphasized, for instance, in Neanderthals, tend to be in the occipital lobe. And that's because these guys could have kicked our butts in pretty much any contact sport. They were just very likely, in all likelihood, based on the endocast that we have, superstar athletes at pretty much everything besides long distance running. Which again, we would probably have them too on sprints, because our bodies are we are optimized for that.
Homo sapiens,
But
track and field, everything else, Neanderthals.
Right, pretty much. Well, some track and field. Any of that weight throwing or like javelin toss.
Oh,
or anything
yeah.
like, also getting our butts kicked out. Perhaps even things like the long jump. I mean, they had just killer glutes and leg muscles just across the board. These guys were something else. So I've got a paper rather that I'm going over this Friday, already uploaded and ready to go on the primitive brain organization of early genus Homo. So the likes of the Demonese specimens, in particular Homo erectus, and their brain organization is indeed very primitive. Now Neanderthals would have them beat on this. But we know from the endocast that their organization is not identical to ours. So, it's a combination when it comes to cognition of, like you said, brain to body size, but it's also the organization and emphases on certain lobes.
Yeah.
And certain regions of the brain.
Yep.
That's really important.
Because Neanderthals are supposed to be earlier humans, they had to be dumber.
Are they earlier, or are they a sister group? Because I was always under the impression that they're more of a sister group.
Yeah, they are a sister group, but they did emerge likely earlier than archaic sapiens, of course. But that being said, it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not by that much. I want to say Neanderthals have us by a couple 100,000 years, which isn't nothing. That's nothing to turn up your nose at. But that being said, you're not seeing like this, they precede us, right? In every shape, form, and fashion. Like, there's just mega contemporaneous overlap going on there.
Yeah.
Obviously. They didn't even go extinct until, relatively recently. So, I mean, you expect the bare minimum, but you're always surprised.
The BBC News reported on an Oxford University study that proposed how Neanderthals were less smart. Here's why. Because they had larger eye sockets. They concluded Neanderthals' brain would have been more focused on visual learning and less on thoughtfulness and cognition.
Incredible.
Talk about it.
I like that the only response is just incredulity. That's it. It's like, of course not. And then, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do have something else to say.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what we were just saying earlier. I mean, that big vaulted forehead isn't going to be morphologically easy to evolve if you've got these big honking brow ridges.
Yeah.
But, their whole note on, I'd be curious to go and look at the article or paper that they're discussing, because I would wager that the visual acuity thing has less to do with the size of the eyes and the size of the orbits and more to do with the big occipital lobe. I could be incorrect on that.
Making the evidence fit your worldview, seriously.
We're all looking at the same evidence, and the evidence that
No, we're obviously not. You guys are ignoring huge swaths of it, and I hate that. I really hate that. Well, we're all looking at the same evidence. No, you're really not, though. And you can tell because when you see creationists who badly misrepresent papers, which is, creationists, basically. If you were looking at all the evidence, you would have read the paper, and you wouldn't feel compelled to lie about it.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, you're totally right. This whole idea of, like, wow, boy, the experts sure are dumb for not just looking at the common sense. Big brain means big thinking, right? Like, oh, they must have been making much cooler stuff than we did because they got a big old brain. It's like, okay, like a whale has bigger brains than you do. How come whales aren't doing all the stuff that humans are doing?
Hands.
Hands, but because the brain is also emphasized.
Nope, Erica, I'm going to go out and say if whales had hands, they would beat humans.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
No, probably
we'll
not.
have to see.
Probably not.
Yeah, so side note, I just wanted to look up to be sure. So Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are proposed to have, of course, come from Homo heidelbergensis. This is something I believe we touched on last time, but we may not have. But Neanderthals would have popped, it looks like they've popped up between 700,000 and 300,000 years ago. That's what's being proposed, I think, by the mitochondrial DNA.
Okay.
So it could be anywhere from totally contemporaneous, because we know we've got human remains from 300,000 years ago. Of course, that's where humans push back to archaic sapiens. Or as much as more than double our time.
Okay.
Just that they were fully human.
Yeah.
But that doesn't fit the evolutionary theory.
No.
Evolutionists have to force the evidence into their evolutionary worldview.
All right. Is there anything a priori that would be problematic for evolution if Neanderthals were essentially cognitively identical to Homo sapiens? Because I don't think there is, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, there wouldn't be. I mean, that's the thing. Like, hominins that were roughly the same, like, intelligence, so to speak, or, like, had the same general abilities, lived contemporaneous with one another, like, pretty consistently since 7 million years ago. And even if you really want to take it back further, you've got the whole, age of the Planet of the Apes of the Miocene. You've just got all of these apes living in Europe all at the same time, exploiting different resources, but they all had roughly the same brain case size. Like, these guys have this idea that fitness is like biggest, smartest, and strongest. Like, those are the things to be the most. It's like, no. Again, Neanderthals probably would have kicked our butts in most physical activities.
I certainly wouldn't want to get into a fist fight.
You wouldn't, and you wouldn't want to try to punch one either. The organization of their faces just, evolved for taking a hit. And ours too, to a degree, especially men. Those big square jaws are really good at taking punches. Some people have proposed that it's an adaptation to the kind of combat that humans do, which is mostly with our fists, especially early on. But I don't know that that's accepted. I've just heard that thrown out there before.
I mean, it's not bonkers.
No issue. There's no issue though with hominins of like approximate intelligence living at the same time. I mean, Naledi and Floresiensis were both relatively low, cognitively speaking, brain case size when compared to Neanderthalensis, Denisovans, and Sapiens. But like they were. It wasn't like that was a prerequisite, that's how it has to be.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It seems... This is just a classic one to me, though. Like, this is literally them being like, experts say a thing that we don't like. I guess they're wrong.
Yeah.
That's their whole stance here. But let's let them chat. Maybe they'll give us some reasoning.
Okay.
All right, now here's an illustration. Go ahead and put that up that we found.
Oh, hey, look, we have a profile view of a Neanderthal and a Homo sapien skull. That's convenient. So, Erika, what did you want to point out about this?
Yeah, so this I like this one less because it's not actually showing the skulls. I tend to kind of be a bit biased against illustrations when we have the actual material available. But again, what I was talking about is that occipital bone on the back, so you'll see that the Neanderthal skull almost comes to a bit of a point when you kind of move towards the, I mean, it's not dorsal for humans, but if we were,
you can't see it easily, but I'm circling it with my mouse.
Yeah, right, there you go. You've got the receding or absent chin, you've got the retromolar gap, which I could pull the skull down, but...
I'm circling the retromolar gap.
A space between the back. You've got, of course, this massive brow ridge. You've got slight prognathism, the actual shape of the zygomatics. You've got the height of the forehead. The human forehead just vaults directly upward compared to the Neanderthals, which slopes backwards. You can't really tell because of the shape of the orb. You can't really tell because of the angle, but the orbits are going to be angled quite a bit differently. And they've emphasized it on the drawing, but as you mentioned earlier, these guys had pretty big noses. My advisor, funnily enough, for my thesis is one of the big guys going against the idea that the Neanderthal nose is actually cold adapted. He thinks that it's not cold adapted. He is against the whole idea. But it has been proposed by some in the past that the reason for these large nasal passages is to help warm the air. This kind of goes against, though, our like geographic evidence, because again, we find these guys in a massive range.
Right.
They're living in areas that are warm pretty much year round as well. So some have proposed too that maybe it's actually has to do with amplifying speech and vocal sounds, not speech. Pretend I didn't say that. Vocalization, because we don't know for sure that they spoke.
So they would have had a horrible nasally voice, like maybe some gibbons. I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, yeah, horribly nasally. I saw actually. There's a very funny. I think it was put out by the BBC. But they found the hyoid bone.
Yeah.
And as well as some other kind of postcrania that allowed them to start kind of looking at what the trachea would have looked like for these guys. And it's shaped quite a bit differently. So the way that air would have passed through it, combined with the volume of their like sinuses and their nasopharynx, led to a very high-pitched nasally voice. And they have this guy up there, and they go, I'll see if I can find it and link in the chat, because it's really funny. They're like, so say 1, 2, 3, and he's like 1, 2, 3, and they're like, now kind of tighten your throat and then bring the volume high up. And he's like 1, 2, 3, and they're like, that's what a Neanderthal would sound like. And I was like, can you imagine being charged by something like that? You're like up steps, and this hulking mass is coming right at you, and it's like,
It sounds like a chipmunk.
A very funny idea. I'll try to find it and stick it in the chat.
Okay.
Of the Neanderthal's brain and the modern human man to show their brains and how they were. But hang on just a second. I was looking at this earlier. I don't know if you'll agree with me, Marianne. Look at those faces. Okay, put up a picture of Van Diesel next.
First, Van Diesel. I don't know who that is, but this is a picture of Vin Diesel. So, but let's.
Neanderthal.
Okay, so let's assess whether or not Vin Diesel, who I will admit does there's a passing resemblance between this illustration and Vin Diesel. But let's see. I'm seeing with Vin Diesel a very noticeable chin. I'm seeing not particularly prominent brow ridges and a vaulted forehead. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say Vin Diesel looks actually much more like a Homo sapiens than a Homo neanderthalensis.
Well, it's not only that, but the unfortunately the musculature and fattiness of the mammalian form can make things a lot more complicated. When you're looking at the skeletons, it's a lot easier to have diagnostic traits that actually separates these organisms on a more fundamental level. So you might have had Neanderthals that could certainly pass for something that looks human. I mean, they are a member of our genus, but you're 100% correct. He's got a vaulted forehead. I guarantee you, if you pull back his cheeks, you'll see that there's not much space between his third molar and where the ramus of his jaw starts. He's got probably no occipital bud, and if you were to look again, like up at his profile side, you would see that he's got a chin. He's got a noticeable chin.
Yep.
Which is just that.
You can even make it out here because the light is actually putting a little highlight on the top of his chin here. So you can actually see the chin. You don't even need the profile.
Right, and people tend to, and of course referring to the local academic professional Ramat, like to put up pictures of men.
Please. Dr.
Yeah, Dr. Ramat. He likes to put up pictures of humans with weak chins.
Right.
And be like, look, they chin. It's like, I don't know how many times I can stress this, and I'm pulling the skull down for this one.
Uh-oh.
But the chin isn't like what it looks like from the outset. The chin has to do with this actual divot itself, this chunk of bone right here. It's very, very noticeable when the skin and muscle is peeled from the face. So if Ramat wants to, really take it to the 11th degree and ask these guys for x-rays, I'm certain that he can do so, but he'll be sorely disappointed because all of these guys will have that chin.
Yeah.
That's what the chin is. It has nothing to do with the jaw, like the jawline, the angle of the jaw, or even like the length of the body of the mandible itself. It has to do with that bony protuberance at the end.
Right.
That's him. That's where they got his face from. Okay, now modern man, throw up Hugh Grant right there. See?
Wow,
Modern
you are
man.
right.
I'm going to point out Hugh Grant actually has a weaker chin than Vin Diesel. So based on just chin, we actually have a better case for Neanderthal with Hugh Grant.
Yeah, I mean, kinda, right? I think this is really funny too. Like, this is such weird shade to throw. It's like, Neanderthals look like meatheads or lunkheads, and Vin Diesel is a very, muscular dude with a big
He might be, but he's also a
rounded
giant.
head.
But Vin Diesel is also a giant nerd, so.
Yeah, he plays like D&D and shit. Like, I'm
Oh yeah.
drinking for the picture.
Yep. So that's one of the things that I actually appreciate about some of the modern sort of big muscle guys is that they're like, yeah, I like to go to the gym and get a pump on, and then I go roll, click clack math rocks, whatever.
It's just kind of funny. Like, God, it's so cringe to me when they're like, let's just eyeball it, and that's the real science. If you can't run your eyeballs across it and get a definitive answer, then it's not real science, which is of course why flat Earth is rampant today. Because from your round position, it's hard to see the curvature. So
Erika, look,
eyeballing is the only true methodology.
Calipers were invented by Satan to trick you.
Oh yeah,
That's
true.
That's what that is.
That's true. That is true. I hadn't thought of it that way. My third eye has been opened.
I'm telling you. That was so that's really where they got that. These are
I think that's entirely based, this similarity is entirely based on, I think, forehead wrinkles and nose shape. I think that's entirely what they're going on for these picture similarities. Because if you look, Vin Diesel in this picture and Neanderthal, they have a bit more forehead wrinkliness. And then Hugh Grant has the more narrow, sort of straight nose, whereas Vin Diesel has sort of a bulge at the end of his nose. I think that's it. That's all they're really going for here. Which isn't actually any of the actual critical aspects of the faces.
It's so lazy. Like, that's the long and short of it. It's so unbelievably lazy.
normal, ordinary people.
They could have been Hollywood actors.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, sure, if there were a living Neanderthal, I don't see why they couldn't be a Hollywood actor, I guess, but it's not really a point. It's just a thing.
There's a fun picture around somewhere out there that is like Neanderthal in like business attire and like what they
I've seen that,
like.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's a fun reimagining. It would be a really neat story for someone to kind of write up a kind of like a sci-fi novel on if all 5 contemporaneous hominins lived to the present day, like what our world would look like. It'd be really neat.
That's in the background of the Halo novels, is an interstellar human civilization with the 5 most recent hominids, or hominins, all living around in the same intergalactic civilization. So
see, I would love that. I love that. That's very cool.
Yep.
Or famous painters like Van Gogh and Michelangelo.
How's that?
Have you seen what they've drawn on cave walls?
The cave drawings, yes,
These
they're incredible.
intricate, multi-dimensional drawings of animals.
Yeah, they're absolutely incredible.
I'm not aware of any of the actual representative art of animals being reliably attributable to Homo neanderthalensis. Are you?
No, I don't believe they have been either. In fact, I think I remember reading in one of the books that's behind me, they were specifically like, we have an inkling, like we think that you can probably positively attribute some of this to Neanderthals, but there's no way to do it with certainty, again, because of that hominins living and overlapping with one another all at once. Neanderthals certainly created. We know for certain that they did that. They were able to kind of do art, I guess. And
They made jewelry. Yeah.
Pigments and arrange flowers with their dead and all that kind of stuff. So, it seems kind of intuitive. This is like the worst. This is me doing what they're doing. It seems intuitive that if they're capable of doing those, they were at least cognitively capable of mimicking something that they see in nature and drawing it on a wall. But we can't know that for sure. I don't think we know that for sure right now. A very interesting bit, though, is like, we know humans were doing it. We have extensive evidence that humans were doing it because humans did it compulsively all the time. Humans are, of course, the storytelling ape. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We were making art for a very long period of time. And it's very easy to attribute it to us. So this is another very stark difference in how the cultures worked. Another thing that Neanderthals couldn't do that we could, at least not with certainty they couldn't do this, is they didn't master ranged weapons, so they didn't do like bows and arrows and things like that the same way that humans did. We do know that they could do knots, and it's been, of course, narcissistically proposed that they learned it from us. Whether or not that's true, I don't know.
Possibly, but why?
Right. I mean, then they organized their rock shelters. They did all sorts of unique things, and they did a lot of things that we did. But there's also quite a bit that wasn't overlapping.
Tesla Ranger has a great quote in here. He says, "He is intelligent but not experienced. His pattern indicates two-dimensional thinking," which is, of course, a quote from Spock from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Beautiful.
Yes, that is the impetus to get the Enterprise into the Mutara Nebula, where they can be largely off scanners and then approach the hijacked ship flown by Khan from, I believe it was underneath, which is one of the only times in all of Star Trek canon that ships approach each other from any direction other than being co-planar and aligned top to bottom. So it was like the Star Trek writers also remembered, hey, space doesn't have an objective up or down, and it's not an ocean. You can meet at different levels and different orientations, and that's okay. That's a thing.
Yeah, that always kind of wows me when I play like No Man's Sky or something like that, and you hyper jump and you're in a new galaxy, and you're like, wait, what's my orientation? There's like a planet up here and a planet like all the way down here, and it's kind of like, whoa, I'm disoriented.
All right, well, I'm going to mention one quick thing, and then we're going to take a quick break to, I think you're probably running low on your beverage. I am on mine.
A little bit left.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break after I mention that hominins is one of the only times that paleontologists get excited about mammal postcrania.
That is true. That is very true. And that is because we are like weirdly unique for postcrania. Humans, and it's not even like our postcrania, like all of it. It's mostly our hands and our feet. And to a lesser degree, our pelvis. But the pelvis adapted pretty early.
Yeah.
Anytime you get some of that, you're like, yes, finger bones are great. You can look at the curvature of the helix. Oh, God, the helix. Just beautiful. The heads of femurs are also great. They can tell us a lot. The worst is when you get like a middle chunk of a femur, and then they're like, okay, what do we do with this? You can only but you can, even then, it's amazing what you can do. You can take a cross-section of it and compare it to all of the other hominins and extant hominids and be like, okay, well, if we're just looking at how the weight is born, we know it probably moved at least a little bit like this, which is just awesome. The anthropologists are amazing.
All right, well, with that, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back, hopefully with refreshed drinks, and anyone here who needs to take a drink, go for it. But yeah, we will see you in just a couple minutes. I want to take a moment to talk about something serious. There is a problem facing late surviving non-avian dinosaurs in modern America. Hunting is very strictly regulated, and only allowed at certain times of the year. This means that for much of the year we have to rely on farm-raised food, which means money. If you want to help a starving dinosaur, please consider donating on Patreon, or buying from my merch store. Links are in the description. Please help. Dinosaurs all over YouTube are depending on you to help them through the hunting off-season. Oh, Nani? Dare? Oh, Ojira desu ka? Hai, Gojira-san. Hai. All right, well, thank you for staying with us through the intermission, those of you who did, which I'm seeing is almost all of you, although there are a number of you who haven't hit like. For shame. So,
Shame on you.
guys, those likes help keep me on the air. Not literally, but they help it so that this may stay something that's worth me doing, quite honestly, so... but anyway, let's get some more...
You gotta control that. The algorithm is a ravenous beast.
It is. Man. Algorithm. Not my favorite thing, unless it's working for me, which it is not doing often enough, so...
The algorithm almost never works.
I have one video that the algorithm just grabbed hold of and was like, hey, everybody, look at this, and then none of my other videos.
Was it one of the speculative Evo ones?
It was actually the one that kind of kicked off why I'm even starting the speculative evolution one, because it was about a different speculative evolution project, and they were just like, oh, hey, did you want an extra 20,000 views on this in the course of a week or so? And I was just like, yeah, sure, I guess.
Holy moly. I don't think I have 20,000 views on anything.
Well, it's a very unusual, it's a big step down. My next biggest one is 12,000, and then it goes to like 8.5, and then it goes to like 4.5, and then it's down to like 1. And that's the ordering of my most viewed videos.
I don't know if I have any with 1, but we'll... Oh, one view. I thought
No, I meant 1K, 1,000.
I was like, I don't think I have any with 1 view.
My
1K. Yes.
My latest video that I just uploaded that only my patrons and members can see, that might only have 1 view.
Oh my god.
Because that just got uploaded earlier today. That was my project this morning, was like, get that finished. And the thing is, this is quick, but I had somehow deleted the source video off of my hard drive. So I open up the file that I'm editing in, and all my clips from the source video are just blank. So I had to re-download it and re-edit in all those clips, and I was just like, no, please, no.
My program of Lightworks gets very finicky on like the location of where my clips come from. So if I move something, Lightworks is like, oh, it's gone forever. I don't know what to tell you. It's gone from a... Don't even think you're moving it while you're still making the video.
Maya Atkinson for $10 said, okay, I get it. Take my money. Thank you very much, Maya. Which actually does put us just over halfway to the next Dapper Dino in a Tutu video. So, just saying.
Ooh, we're getting close.
Yep, we need another 46.
The last time it happened, so...
All right.
No.
Well, here we go.
And I bring bucks.
Yes. It's that wonderful gibbony face that just money pours in.
Quite round, if I do say so myself. My physique is very good. I have very long limbs and a very round head.
All right.
Well, up next, Marianne gets to interview Bruce Malone, author of Brilliant, Made in the Image of God. In the book and in the interview, he talks about the evidence behind Neanderthal showing they weren't dumb, they were incredibly smart.
Yes.
Are we taking a commercial break?
That shows that mankind came on the scene very quickly, super intelligent, and not ape-like.
What do you think about humankind not being ape-like? What does that mean?
Yeah, they all get their panties in a twist about being an ape. I think honestly that it's the colloquial connotation that pisses them off. Like if you sit down with a creationist, usually you can be like, okay, you're a mammal, and they'll be like, yes, But of course, I have mammary glands and hair, and females of my species can produce milk, and they give live birth and nurse their young, and yeah, we're all cool with that.
Hey,
And you're like,
enough
okay,
prolactin,
cool.
and males of the species will also produce milk.
That's true. And then you're like, okay, cool. What about large brain to body size ratio? What about binocular vision? What about specific structures in your dexterous grasping hands and nails instead of claws? And that's when they'll say, well, yeah, I guess I have those too. And then you're like, okay, cool, you're a primate, And then they're like, hold the damn phone. Primate. And you're like, okay, so which traits did you disagree with? Which of those do you lack?
It's a this is not my wallet sort of situation. You can usually take them through. You can take them through every single step, and it's like, okay, therefore you are primate. Nope, nope. It's like
it's not my wallet. Totally. I'm drinking for commercial break because that's
all right.
Annoying.
Well, we'll see if we can't skip through it mostly.
At all.
All over the world, there are similar findings of ancient religions.
All right.
There are speculations. So visit us at www.ways.
Dude, I can't
Here on
believe it
Creation
actually
Today.
is a commercial.
Yup. Do you want to drink again for commercial?
Yeah, I'm drinking again for that. I thought it was a joke, kind of. Like,
No.
That's
Look.
ship apologetics with the green screen in the background.
Well,
Or when this thing got canceled after like 4 episodes.
Well, Erika, as you know, but most of the audience might not know, it's dangerous to film yourself in front of a green screen that you haven't keyed out, because I might key it out for you.
That's exactly it. And you don't want that to key it out for you.
No, because I there's a fair chance that if I decide to key out your green screen, I will know exactly what you don't want behind your green screen, and that is probably what I'll put in there.
Might end up being dozens of himbos. Who knows?
It might be.
I'm here with Bruce Malone,
And no microphone.
and he is the author of Brilliant, Made in the Image of God.
Okay, I really have to know, could they not afford to mic her? They didn't have any like little clip-on mic? Like
Surely they sent them out there and they were like, shit, we don't have the mics. And then she was just like, you know what? Like, I'm ready to get my check for this whole endeavor. Let's just do it live. Like, let's just do it anyway.
In-camera audio all the way, I guess. Ugh.
God. How incredible.
It's the thing is, it's sort of like incongruous with the rest of the production values. Because the audio was good earlier. The camera work has been pretty good. They have decent graphics. And then, like, you forget to mic your host. Like, come on, dudes.
God, our poor hostess here, every time she's looking directly at the screen, and maybe it's just because she's genuinely very hyped to be there, but she almost looks like she's about to start, like, blinking Morse code, being like, hey, get me out of here, and hell to get well. Like, so there's almost like a panic about her. And that's similar to how I feel watching this.
Ooh, also, you can tell they sat her too close to the bookshelf, because if you look, they brought a 3-light setup, because that's a typical like TV lighting setup, is a 3-point lighting. But you can see the reflection of all 3 lights in her eyes, which you shouldn't be able to if you're doing proper 3-point lighting. So that's another great thing. They couldn't actually fit the 3-point lighting in the room.
The thing is Eric Hovind stuff usually has pretty good graphics. It's mostly just garbo production, outside of that.
All right, well, here we go. We've talked enough about how bad the production is. Let's get to the sciencey part.
That's true.
And he's going to talk about the intelligence of ancient man. So, Bruce, we are taught that man's ancient ancestors were less advanced. So, what do ancient cultures teach us about man's intelligence?
I mean, less advanced if you're going to measure them by how similar they are to modern humans. But if you were to say, measure them by, say, I don't know, how well adapted they are to living in the places that they lived, eating the diets that they ate, they would be pretty darn advanced.
Ancient cultures, like, what is she about to get into here? Like, are we talking like human agricultural society, or are we using culture like if you pass it down to your offspring and it's a behavior, it's culture?
I'm not sure. We'll find out.
Let's find out.
Well, nobody has a time machine. So in order to figure out what happened in the past, you've got to look at the data. But ultimately, there is no such thing as prehistoric or prehistory.
What's that? Sorry.
I said the data from the present.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, that feels almost a little. Ooh, that feels like it's dipping a toe in uniformitarianism there, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. If you can determine what happened in the past from the present, then maybe we can determine things like how old the Earth is, and it's not 6,000 years old. Risky business right there.
I sure hope we're not proposing that the present is the key to the past.
Because God
Feels like
clearly
they're-
told us what is the history of this planet.
Oh, no, don't worry. The correct way to do science is to come to your relatively arbitrary conclusion about the meaning of a group of texts from a long time ago, and then fit any data into it, because of course, why would you judge a text based on the data, or at least your interpretation of the text on the data, when you could judge the data based on a book that you chose for reasons that apparently have nothing to do with how likely it is to be true, because if you chose it on that basis, you would have already been weighing it against the evidence.
Yeah, there sure does seem to be a lot of that, right? Like, let's, I love, one of my favorite things that they do, just as an offhanded side note, is, creationists, younger creationists will very frequently be like, listen, if you're a theistic evolutionist and you're trying to put evolution into the text or allow for it, that's bad. You're totally not being exegetically honest there, and that's just poor reading, and you're making the text say something it doesn't say. And then they'll turn around and then they'll be like, well, obviously Noah took seeds on the ark because all of the died in the global flood. It's intuitive.
Or even from this video, hey, remember the biblical ice age?
Right, yeah, exactly. We have to accommodate the data. That's what they say. Or they'll be like, okay, well, we see plants here today, and the global flood killed all living things, so I suppose he had to have taken the plants on, because salt water kills freshwater plants, I mean, especially being submerged for a year. So it's very convenient how they manage to pick and choose, but, convenience is the name of the game with YEC.
Oh, yeah.
Now, your question was, what can we learn about the intelligence of ancient man? Let's just back up to get the bigger picture. There are only two possibilities for existence. Either something turned into us, or people were literally created as people.
Wouldn't people being created from the dust of the earth still count as something turning into people? Namely, the dust of the earth?
And I drank for that.
Yeah.
It totally would. I don't know, that feels very binary to me. I love this idea that, because the way he frames it, right, is that in this context, it's either young earth creationism in the Christian sense under this specific interpretation, or bad, mean evolution, which doesn't make any sense. You can just already tell that it's going to be a binary. It's not going to be like, oh, religious ideas, general theism versus, more naturalistic perspective. It's got to be the old one versus one.
Yeah.
If something turned into us, it must have been less intelligent. So the whole...
Wait, no, that doesn't follow from the beginning. Like, that is what it ended up being, but things can decrease in intelligence. That's a thing that can happen, right?
Things can and do decrease in intelligence.
In fact, actually, one from an area that I'm familiar with, sauropods overall did not at all get smarter. In fact, they tended to get pretty dumb as they got bigger. Because when you're a full-grown sauropod, basically, if you can find food and, hit things with your tail that bug you, and then manage to recognize the opposite sex in order to mate, that's about all you need to do, and you don't need a lot of brain power to do any of that. It's not like your food is running away from you. So, yeah.
I was going to suppose, too, with a lot of domesticated species, this has been what we've done, right? Like, we have intentionally guided in that direction intelligence, like from jungle fowl to chickens. So, or, and I hate to say this because I'm surrounded by sweet ones, but perhaps even dogs from wolves.
Well, dogs do vary a lot in their intelligence, though. There's some much more intelligent dogs and some very, very dumb dogs.
More suspecting that tameness might be tied, at least, across the neural crest to some level of cognition.
So
Producing that fear response to humans seems that's speculation.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
we have from Vandalian 1998 for $2, except for the magic olive tree the dove found. Yeah, that guy managed to survive being inundated with salt water very well, surprisingly well. Now, it's curious to me that creationists don't have this as an experiment, like, say, at the Ark Encounter, right? Like, why don't they have an olive tree dunk tank?
True, because it doesn't work. That's an excellent point.
It would kill your olive tree.
Well, in fact, it wouldn't surprise me at all if this has been done. Like, if they've done this and then they've been like, ooh, that kills the tree. This is the public. We'll just keep that one real hush-hush. We could probably do that experiment ourselves, honestly. I feel bad about killing the tree.
Yeah, I don't... I would, like honestly, if you presented me with a full-grown olive tree, and you were like, put this under ocean water, I would just be like, no, I don't care what it would prove. I don't want to kill a full-grown olive tree to dunk on the creationists.
That makes me kind of sad.
Yeah, plus I like olives.
Yeah, me too. I too like olives.
Education system, the archaeological system, the study of the past, historians, they view things through this filter. Something turned into us, they must have been less intelligent. So when they look at ancient artifacts, they kind of assume they're the product of less intelligent people. That's one viewpoint.
What?
Yeah, I don't I don't know. Because here's the thing, right? Let's say we take a bunch of modern humans and we dump them in we have a copy of Earth, right? It's like Bizarro Earth, right? It's on the opposite side of the sun for some reason, right? It's an exact duplicate of Earth, but there's no humans. We take a bunch of like modern humans who have, cell phones and whatnot, and we dump them on the plains of Africa where, Homo sapiens first evolved. This is your natural habitat. This is as reasonably close to what you're physically adapted to as you're ever going to find in the world. And you're just dumped naked with nothing. The tools and stuff that they create are going to be pretty basic, because most people aren't survivalists who have all these great, like, flint knapping skills and, wild game hunting skills and whatnot. They're going to struggle to make it through, and their technology is going to be very basic. But are they any dumber than people are now? No. Technology builds on itself, right? You have to pass down techniques culturally. When someone develops a new technique, it has to filter through the population to spread and stuff like that. So
sure,
it's not a sign of lower intelligence. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the idea that we get where we say, like, very early hominins were less intelligent than modern Homo sapiens is more based on the actual fossils than just the archaeology.
It's based on the brain case size. I mean, and interestingly enough, obviously modern panins, for example, use a wide variety of tools, to the degree that in West Africa, they have their own archaeological history in some of those forests. Mm-hmm. We can actually dig into the ground and find old stones that they've manipulated and no evidence of humans having ever lived in that area, because of course it's rainforest. But the thing is that you're right. It's a combination of things, right? So you might have a brain case size that it's very difficult to look at the hominins. I'm kind of pivoting for a sec to lay some groundwork here. When you look at all the hominin skulls, like for example, you look at Australopithecus afarensis. With that brain case size, it's larger than a chimp's. How much more can it do? Like, how many steps have we taken here? Because we can't know the precise brain organization from an endocast. We can get a lot out of it and identify a lot of kind of calling card zones of the brain. But we can't know everything. And so there's a gap in how much these guys could do. What kind of advanced tools could they make? They're approximately 200 cc's bigger than your average chimps, and chimps can do a lot. So what kind of stuff were they making? Could they exploit fire, perhaps? Could they sharpen sticks and use them as hunting tools or in intergroup conflict? What's the limit that they could do? And that's where archaeology comes in, because the brain case is going to give you a range. Well, they're probably not going to be harnessing the wheel at 500 cc's. But they're going to be doing some cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And finding the tools that are contemporaneous with them gives us an idea, at least, of the preserved minimums and maximums, right? So it's it provides important context, because you're right. If you drop a human in the middle of, the rainforest today, or I guess more aptly the savannah, they're not going to be doing that much complicated stuff. I mean, they might be able to weave some things. They could probably sharpen a lot of sticks. They might even figure out how to, use ligaments and sticks together, bone sticks together, do some kind of like archery, long-range weaponry. But again, it's going to be a range, and if you're not working, on the shoulders of the giants that came before you, they're not going to be making the Gutenberg press,
Right.
So therein lies the problem. Foundations, general brain case size, and archaeology kind of work together.
Yeah.
The biblical viewpoint is we were made in the image of God. One of those ways was our creativity and our intelligence, and you see it everywhere. But the question is that just a recent development, or have we always been that way? As I researched this book, Brilliant, Made in the Image of God, what I discovered was all of these ancient civilizations from the Chinese who were...
Okay.
Oh my goodness, I'm taking a drink. This is beyond stupid. As if the archaeology of humanity starts with civilization. Holy crap, does it not?
10,000 years ago, people were like pretty on the same level, cognitively speaking. I mean, we're looking at the sole remaining hominin, and we're the only one existing and transmitting information between one another, and we've kind of reached our apex here. So of course the cognition is going to be standardized. Like, this is a lot.
And also,
I don't know.
Just the fact that he's saying, all these ancient civilizations. If you're starting with ancient civilizations, you're already starting tens of thousands of years into the existence of Homo sapiens.
My God, yeah, we're talking eliminating 290,000 years of history, of learning, of effort, of culture, of trading information, of trial and error, and then we're being like, yeah, dude. Look at this.
Them Chinese, they were pretty smart. It's like, I don't disagree, but...
This would be like, a person from, 100 years in the future drawing a line at, the 1900s and being like, see, we were always smart. We never used tools.
People always had horseless carriages. What are you talking about?
Always. Oh, God.
Oh, Erika, did we lose you?
I'd have to drink twice for that.
Oh, that's fair. I thought we lost you for a second there.
No, I just said we might have to drink twice for that.
Yeah, but you cut out for a little bit.
Oh, shoot.
It's
you
all
want
right.
me to...
I think it'll be fine for now.
What?
Well, we'll see what the audience thinks. If you guys think we need Erika to disconnect and reconnect, then we'll see what happens. But
we can definitely give it a shot.
Actually, it might be worth it to try turning off the camera and see if that works.
Yeah, we can do that. I can turn off the cam.
All right.
I'll miss my beautiful round head.
I know. All right. Well,
okay.
I'll just resize some stuff here just to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing without the wonderful gibbon face.
Oh, but of course.
All right, here we go.
Wall way back 3,500 years ago.
Oh no! Take another drink. The Great Wall did not exist 3,500 years ago.
It's
Not even close. Oh my goodness. It's like apparently the Yangtze River civilization springs up and boom, they build a wall, or several walls actually, along the far western border of what would later become the Chinese Empire. Yeah, that's how that worked. Oh my goodness.
This is what happens when someone decides to just write a book, right? Like they're just like, I feel like writing a book about civilizations. I might have majored in finance, but I'm just gonna go for it.
This is like physically painful. I can feel like a cluster headache developing behind my left eye right now. This is terrible. And you think I might be joking about that? I'm not.
It's definitely a lot.
Oof, man.
To the Egyptians, who produced pyramids of unbelievable precision.
That is actually closer to 3,500 years ago. I'll give you that one.
But
here's the other thing. They didn't start that way. Have you ever heard of the bent pyramid, Erika?
Yeah. Not only that, you've got the bent, and you've got the red, and you've got the hundreds of years of stacked mastabas prior to that.
Right. Well, my favorite thing about the bent pyramid... Cool. So my favorite thing about the Men Pyramid is it comes after a period of a lot of stepped pyramids, where you have different like just square bases of significantly different size. Right.
You're ziggurat.
Basically. But then at one point, someone was like, hey, let's try like a smooth-sided pyramid, right? And like, oh yeah, that's cool. So they start building this pyramid and they realize, oh, this is too steep. We can't. So about halfway through the construction, they just radically changed the angle to be way more shallow. And so you get this like Hershey's Kiss shaped pyramid because they didn't know how to build pyramids from the start. They started out dumb using trial and error. And the first time they tried it, they screwed it up. And
it's a beautiful, fantastic, preserved example of the trial and error. That's what's so neat about it. And the history of the Egyptians and their megalithic structures is, fortunately, because of how like anal the Egyptians were, really, really well recorded. They like to write stuff down. So it's not just like the structures themselves, but it's the corvée labor that went into it.
Yeah. Oh, another thing is, it took the Egyptians forever to figure out that you could have freestanding columns and that's okay. For the longest time, they would connect the columns to the wall of the structure they were building. So instead of making just columns with open space between them, they were making little alcoves. Because they were afraid, essentially, that if you just put in the column without a connecting wall, that wasn't going to be good enough. And so
it might fall over.
Right. But even though that's not actually true. So like the Egyptians had all sorts of great architecture, but you can look through their very long history and see the development and sophistication of Egyptian architecture. It doesn't start off like it does in, say, the late kingdom or the Ptolemaic period or something. When you look at like early kingdom architecture, they don't even start with columns. They're like, nope, square rooms. You can't support it with the walls. You need to build a smaller room. Then eventually go ahead.
No, the entire Old Kingdom is like that. Like, the entire Old Kingdom is like, can we do this? Are we sure we can do this?
Yeah. And then, you get into periods where they start like, oh, we could kind of do column-like things to get, like, pretend big rooms. And then eventually you get to, like, the New Kingdom and the Ptolemaic period, which is actually, by the way, where most of the artifacts that you see in museums come from.
The Ptolemaic period is a big one.
Yeah. And that's where they're doing, like, these grand, galleries with, freestanding columns and all sorts of amazing architecture. But, like...
Necropolis.
Yeah, you cannot simply port in, like, late kingdom Ptolemaic stuff into just... That's Egyptian, all of it. Egypt has a strong continuity throughout the entire history of, pharaonic Egypt. But it definitely did not start out with the full sophistication of its end period. It's just...
These guys love it. You really do love to see it. Only the best.
And like the Venerable Bede said, as cringes in history major. Yeah, exactly. This is very painful.
Enormous, limestone blocks were cut.
You can summarize most of Earth creationism as cringe.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is, people always notice just how cringy it is when it starts to impinge on their area of study.
That's true. And here's the thing: it will. It will impinge on your area of study.
Yeah. And the thing that's great is I like watching other people who have studied other things that I haven't, and they have the exact same reaction to the parts of Young Earth creationism that talk about that as I do to the parts of Young Earth creationism that talk about like this or dinosaurs. And I'm just like, oh no, please.
It's all bad. It's all bad.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Come on.
Plus or minus 1/16 of an inch. And they stacked millions of them in a matter of...
Look, you can see imprecision of more than a 16th of an inch right here. The fact is that the Egyptians checked and rechecked as they were going to get the overall slope right, and then they covered everything in capstones. But
the capstone thing is the key here, right? I mean, the whole thing used to be entirely different than what we observe today. We're basically seeing the skeleton.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of classic human smudging the lines to make it look less obvious, the mistakes. Because if it turns out when you're just throwing corvée laborers at a task, there's going to be mistakes.
Yeah. Well, that's why when you look at artwork depicting the building of monumental architecture in ancient Egypt, you have laborers, but you also have a lot of foremen with plumb bobs and levels and things like that, right? Like, they were constantly checking this because you could not rely on people placing big lumps of rock to get it right. And so every few layers of whatever they were building, they would come back and check, okay, is this level, is this flush, is this, is this plumb? And then they would continue on after they made any corrections they needed to in the next step. So it's not that there's this precision all the way up, it's that every once in a while you stop and you say, hey, we've drifted off target by this much, so we need to correct by this much to get back on target, and then you go again. Which is, it's not extraordinary, it's just, you just have to do the effort.
So, in a side note that I think is just a little Egyptian factoid that's kind of fun, when Pharaoh Hatshepsut was in charge, right? She's a female pharaoh. She sends her son off to what is effectively ancient Egyptian boarding school because he's too young to rule, according to her. She rules for the entire period and has what is generally considered by Egyptologists to be a super successful rule. She reopens trade with Punt, does a whole lot of just really chill stuff, not many wars, settles a lot of beefs between Egypt and other nations. And because the Egyptians lived to die, at the end she was like, okay, I'm going to build this really sick necropolis that they're going to inter my body in when I'm dead. And this necropolis on the side, of course, has all her achievements as pharaoh. And this guy is like talking about how awesome and dope it is to be Hatshepsut and how great the kingdom was when she was in charge. And once her son took over after she died, I believe he took over once he came of age, kind of. She fended him off for quite some time, and then she was kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then after she died, the next generation was like, hey, pretty cringe that we had a woman pharaoh. I guess let's go ahead and just erase any idea that Hatshepsut was a woman. And so they went to her necropolis and they had laborers scratch out the mentions of her name and her female reference pronouns. But they missed a couple, so it's just classic human nature where they sent the corvée laborers out there. You can imagine the corvée laborers are sitting there and they're like, man, I just want to get out of here. This lady was such a narcissist. Her name is literally everywhere. And so they're like, you know what? We've done a good enough job. Let's bail. And so an archaeologist uncovered it. They were like, wait, this was to a woman? This was to a female pharaoh? Because it looks like half the names are scratched out, but half are still around. And that's how we found out, because of some lazy corvée laborers. And that's exactly the same thing that you were just talking about, where it's like, human nature, when it can shine, boy, does it shine.
Yeah. Basically, their find and replace text search didn't quite catch it all. Kind of like when you miss a DWIGT when you're trying to replace Dwight.
Right, exactly. Sorry, I was taking a drink.
Yeah, and you take a dwigged. Yep.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Of decades to create the pyramids, aligned them within a fraction of a percent of 1 degree of the magnetic field of the Earth, located them precisely.
No, last I remember, now, granted, I don't have a reference for this handy, but if I remember correctly, the sides of the pyramids are lined up to celestial north, which is not exactly hard to do if you can watch the night sky over a single night. You can notice where the celestial pole is. Cardinal directions, people like to make a big deal out of ancient people getting cardinal directions right, but it's actually a thing if you're in the practice of watching the sky at all. Because, they're all 90 degrees to each other, so if you know what one is...
That's the thing. It's like... And, we could sit around and talk about the classic ancient aliens thing where they're like, holy shit, how did these, brown people do all this big stuff? And then they're like, oh, well, I guess it must have been aliens, or it must have been supernatural, or humans must have just been all created intelligent. And they forget that every human civilization, made their own unique, cool shit. And more importantly, pretty much every human civilization, as we just mentioned, recorded the errors of said civilization. It didn't come out of nowhere. In case of the Ben Pyramid that you just mentioned.
I think the only thing the aliens helped the Europeans with was Stonehenge, and then after that they were just like, you guys got this.
Right, it's so funny though, because it's like these people had no light pollution, which means they sat around all night looking up at the stars, or at least very little light pollution coming pretty much only from fire.
Yeah, fire pits and torches and lanterns. At this point, oil lamps.
So they're looking up, and I can say this from experience. But when I was in Tanzania in the heart of Gombe, there's just no light pollution there, and you can see the color in the sky. The night sky has color to it if there's no light pollution, which is something that I think would be great if everyone could experience. If we could have like a space day and everyone turns off all their lights. Not that would ever happen.
There are parts of the U.S. that you can drive to where there is effectively no light pollution.
That's true. Yes, you don't have to go into the middle of another continent to do.
I remember
you can totally do it.
I was on a stretch of rural highway in New Mexico, and the nearest town was about, I think, 50 miles away, and it was about 4 a.m. And yeah, I was just like, you know what? I'm pulling off to the side of the road, and I'm going to just stare up at the sky for a little while because I'm almost never going to get this view.
And you see you can see the Milky Way, of course, all of the stars, and then the color of the sky. And it's like these people sat around and watched the sky all the time. Of course they knew the cardinal directions. You would have to be an abject moron not to accidentally pick up on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know that ancient humans could do it, let alone, of course, arranging the pyramids in such a way that they aligned with the stars, or with certain stars.
Also, if he's saying it lines up with magnetic north, magnetic north changes a lot right now. How could you even guess at what magnetic north was when the pyramids were built? I don't know. I don't think you can.
This rings very true to the old the Tesla pyramid. The pyramids were solar-powered batteries BS that you hear from like after school or ancient aliens,
Or our friend Mr. Maddox.
Well, yes, I'm indirectly, of course, referring to our friend Mr. Maddox.
Yeah, who apparently thinks that the pyramids were somehow batteries.
He watched the documentary.
Oh, I forgot. They can't put it in a documentary if it isn't true.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you're missing the whole point, Albert.
It's super old, but part of me wants to take apart the stupid bits about from what is it, Zeitgeist, about their weird takes on Christianity, because look, if you want to criticize Christianity, this is not how you do it, because this is extra dumb. So
that's the thing. Like you could, oh god, the biblical scholars are the ones who almost have a pulmonary every time these guys open their mouths.
Oh my goodness!
And you want to talk about how the biologists at least can ignore them,
Yeah. But these
and then you get biblical scholars, and they're like, holy cow!
All right, we're gonna get a little bit more in here.
Precisely 1/3 of the way from the equator to the North Pole.
I'm sorry, no. You don't get to say that where the Egyptians were is a sign of some kind of advanced awesomeness in their intellect. There is no requirement for people to be awesome in order to have settled in a fertile valley in the middle of a desert. I'm taking a drink. They're 1/3 of the way. Yeah, that's just where they happen to be.
Yeah, I'm taking a drink too. Totally epic point there, Battleship Apologetics.
A very precise position that shows they knew the size of the Earth and they knew the location on the Earth, shows that they were intelligent.
And that's the thing, I'm not disagreeing that they were intelligent, but us pretending that all these awesome things were true and getting the time frames wrong is not helping your case, dude.
This is a nothing point. This is a totally nothing point. This is like when creationists are like, look at symbiosis. These animals, if evolution is true, would have had to evolve in sync with one another.
Yeah.
Yes. That is what happened. Thank
exactly.
You. It's a non-point. Ancient people are intelligent. Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
It's like, you mean the people in the Bronze Age weren't dumb? No, they just didn't have as much history of technology behind them. That's it.
I mean, this is exactly what, and others have covered this way better than I have, of course, but we've mentioned the topic here before. This is like the basis of all of kind of weird fringe apologetics, including young Earth creationism. The only way that it can still exist is if it composes this just amalgamation straw man and then fights with that instead of what anyone is actually saying.
Yeah.
They were smart, they were innovative, and they understood mathematics, building language right from the very start of their civilization.
Oh my goodness. The start of civilization is not the start of language. Okay, so we'll just take a look at Egyptian, right? So, we have a pretty good handle on Egyptian vocabulary and grammar from before the Middle Kingdom, but not all the way to the beginning of the Early Kingdom, right? On. But we also have very early Kingdom inscriptions that we can mostly read, and so we know that their language was not radically different from what it was in, say, the Middle Kingdom. Okay. But by then, Egyptian was already a member of the Afroasiatic language family, along with then extant Semitic languages, which were already related to Proto-Semitic before the first Semitic-speaking civilizations, and Egyptian was already related to other Afroasiatic languages in Africa, such as Berber, which were already established, again, before civilization. So there was already a language family of at least Afroasiatic, and we also know Sino-Tibetan, because we know that the Han Chinese dynasties started, which is essentially invented writing in China, were already speaking Han Chinese, but we know that that split came after the speakers of Proto-Sino-Tibetan. So we know for a fact that fully fledged modern-like languages with full grammar and vocabulary, the kind of fully complex languages we would expect, predate all civilization. We know it for a fact.
I think that's a bite-sized bust waiting to happen. You know, a good language. Language precludes young Earth creationism.
I mean, it might be. It certainly precludes this guy's point that, like, oh, these languages just popped into existence, and it's like, no, dude. Complex languages. Like, we have a pretty good working idea about Proto-Indo-European, right? That's the language that's the common ancestor of, like, English and German and French and Hindi and Persian and just all sorts of, like, Russian, you know, Italian, Greek. All of these are Indo-European languages. We're at the point now where people can compose poetry in Proto-Indo-European. And we can't be 100% certain that that's exactly how the language would have actually been. But, like, it's a fully fledged language with a complex grammar, phonology, phonotactics, a rich vocabulary. It's a language that's no less complicated than English or German or Latin or Hindi or Sanskrit or anything, right? But it's a prehistoric language. It was spoken before people were building cities.
Yeah, I mean, the communication is like one of the foundations of our entire species. I mean, we know communication was going on. We find marks of timekeeping and interactions with other cultures for which, you know, language was pretty evident between, like, archaic humans living in rock shelters.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we'll keep going now that we've had our little rant about languages not lining up with this guy's crazy ideas that civilizations just pop into existence.
Right.
Now that contradicts the idea we came from some less intelligent creature.
No, it doesn't, because the time gap. So he's trying to say that the fact that civilizations pop up with these things like languages, which, by the way, the first civilizations that pop up don't start off being able to write. So we actually don't have great records of what their languages were. So he could even be overstating to what degree they were literate, but we'll just disregard that because it's a sort of little wrinkle in the argument. But this supposed time gap between when humans would have first developed language and the first civilization is like hundreds of thousands of years, right?
Well, so to me, this entire thing feels a lot like if you have an individual who walks into a forest and they examine all the trees in the forest and they say to themselves, wow, it's really cool that all these trees, you know, came from, like, mini trees covered in bark. And then someone comes up and says, hey, well, you know, trees come from seeds. And they're like, I don't see any bark on that seed. Now, obviously, the bark's still in place because all of them have bark now. I mean, this is so, it's such an asinine point to try to make.
Yeah. It doesn't even begin to approach, it's a combination of just, like, vastly misunderstanding how just actual recorded history works, how civilizations come about, the actual, it's a complete straw man of the mainstream understanding of, you know, human history and prehistory. Basically everything about this is dumb on multiple levels. But I sort of do want the book.
the thing that's funny, yeah, the book would be fun to go through. It's probably chock full of amazing, incredible, accurate information. The thing is that's funny to me too is that like we've been going through this video for a while now, and this section, which is again a nothing point, has made up like a third of it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, let's see what other nothing points we can get out of it, because we probably don't have a whole lot more segments to go before we call it a night here.
But it supports the biblical idea that we were made in the image of God, and that's just one example.
I will say it doesn't contradict that idea. I'll give it that. That's the most I'm willing to go for. It doesn't contradict the idea that humans have some special imprint of the image of God, and I'm not here to dispute that anyway. I don't really care, at least as far as Dapper Dino goes. Like, whatever.
The thing about that is, though, like, I hate that argument. I hate that, and you know this about me, Dapper, but the whole human exceptionalism thing,
Yeah.
it kind of falls flat on its face when you're considering the broader diversity of life on this planet. I mean, you pick a species. You'll be able to find that this species does something that no other species does. And you can find many species that do many more unique things than humans do when compared to other animals. Like, the stuff that we do is really, really obvious. We build massive cities. We make incredibly complicated tools. But at the end of the day, the argument could be made that we are just taking tool making to the next level.
But what if each of those species was made by its own god in whose image they were made?
Well, that's kind of the point that I'm making. Like, were mantis shrimp made in the image of the mantis shrimp god because only they have the incredible range of color vision?
And they can distinguish the polarity of light in both planar and annually polarized light, so...
Yeah. They do a lot of cool stuff.
Yep, they were made by the god of crazy eyes. You might have thought it was the beholders, but no, it was actually the mantis shrimp.
Oh, it's always been mantis. Wait, it's all mantis shrimp? Always has been.
Could you explain to us like the connection of these ancient cultures to scripture, the scriptural account?
Sure. And once again, we have to interpret this stuff. I mean, we don't live in the past.
Oh, now we have to be circumspect. Okay.
But they did live
You have to
in the past.
interpret it very carefully.
But you would think, biblically, there were major events upon the earth the Bible talks about. Those ought to show up in these cultures. These cultures developed at a certain time in earth history. Now here's the scriptural view of history. If you just assume the Bible means what it says, there was the literal creation of different forms of life. In the old King James, it says birds reproduce after their own kind. That's just another way of saying birds only make birds. And then it says trees only make...
You know, it's funny, because evolution also says that birds only make birds and trees only make trees. Weird.
I honestly, I can't believe Kent made a living so long saying, like, implying this and acting as if this was some bold point that only creation could do.
I know.
Like, to my knowledge, it took several decades for someone to be like, and I guess because of the internet, it wasn't that no one said it was just that it finally became easily accessible to everyone instead of like private talks. Someone was like, hey, Kent, that's called the law of monophyly, my guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and yet here he is. Says the same stuff still to this day. The man is untouchable with regard to the passage of time.
Also, can I point out the prominently displayed VeggieTales in the lower right? I gotta say...
Is there?
Oh yeah, those VeggieTales book down in the lower right.
Yeah, there it is. Aw.
Yeah.
I do like VeggieTales.
Classic VeggieTales. There's some new VeggieTales drawn on Netflix, and I tried watching it with some friends, and it was... Neo VeggieTales is not what VeggieTales used to be. Let's just say that.
I didn't even know there was new VeggieTales.
Don't even bother. It will just make you pine for the elder years of the VeggieTales.
I like to think that at least a small chunk of surreal humor came from VeggieTales there.
Oh, the original stuff, yeah, but now it's just sort of like boringly derivative of what it's just like desperately trying to grasp at what it used to be without the same writing staff, so it just doesn't work.
Yeah. You never want to lose the writing staff. Every time that happens, from The Simpsons to Arrested Development and Community, it never goes well.
Yeah, I mean, there might be some value to it, but it's just like, the spark is gone, sorry. Ever since VeggieTales folded... You know the story behind VeggieTales folding, though, right?
Yes, some of it. I saw Saberspark did a video on it.
It basically comes down to the movie.
Yeah, the pirates who don't do anything, right?
Yeah, so they spent so much time and money trying to get distribution for the movie and sinking all they had into that by the time they were able to get distribution for the movie, they had already folded under. And it was just like, sorry guys, we literally sank the ship trying to make a feature-length movie. But at least we made it.
Poor Veggie.
I know.
They were doing their best.
They were. And it was, look, when it comes to, like, Christian kids entertainment, it's definitely top tier.
And dude, I think VeggieTales is funny even if you're not a Christian. Like the whole thing is that like it teaches good lessons. Like even if you're not into the like, you don't have to buy into those things having happened to get a good lesson out of them.
Yeah, well, a lot of it is stuff like, don't lie to your parents, or, hey, if you agree to take care of a pet, you have to actually take responsibility for it and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, no, that's fair.
Smitty says old VeggieTales was bad. I haven't seen old VeggieTales in forever, but I have fond memories.
Well, maybe it is that I just remember it fondly because I was a kid. But okay, we get at least one more section in here.
Trees. Fish only make fish. Cattle only make cattle. God couldn't have been more clear.
Okay.
That's an event. That is biology. And if we deny that, we misinterpret it.
I'll take a drink. He is technically right. That is biology.
Chapter 3, death is here because we rebelled against God. God brought death into all of creation. Not because it's always been that way. There's no room for millions and billions of years in case. Then it talks about a worldwide.
So this, I think, is where we're going to stop it, and we'll do some, like, Erika can plug what she's up to on her channel. I'll talk about stuff on my channel. But what I want to point out here is, like, okay, look. It is not the universal Christian consensus that what Genesis or the Bible in general is saying is that all death is because of the fall of Adam and Eve. That is not even a widely held belief in Christianity in general. Most Christians don't think that. And they actually have not just scientific reasons, but also scriptural reasons. And it bugs me when creationists don't take seriously the religious diversity of Christianity, right? Christianity itself is a diverse religion with a diverse range of opinions on various theological issues. I'm not here to tell you which one is the, quote, authentic version of Christianity, but what I will say is simply dismissing those versions of Christianity as not counting because they're not yours is not okay.
Well, I'm sorry too, but I'll be the bad guy on this one. There is, to some degree, a correct way of interpreting ancient languages, or at least a correct range. Like, you can't simply take a word and say something, if it says either bear or big beast, and say that it means, river. Like, there's a level of objectivity to interpretation.
No, I would agree that, yeah, there's only so many ways to translate a text that are reasonably valid.
And biblical scholars just dunk on young Earth creationists.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they really are out here BTFOing young Earth creationists using their own book. And, a great many incredible Christians who are scientists and occupying all different levels of society are religious and maintain that religion. They just aren't young Earth creationists because they think that that's genuinely the incorrect way to interpret the Bible. The entire Jewish community is, for the most part, like that as well. And they're the ones that wrote the book.
Mm-hmm. All right,
no, I mean, that's that blows my mind is that the evangelicals are, for lack of a better word, like kind of hijacking the Pentateuch and saying that it says something that the Jews don't think it said.
Yeah, or that the likely authors probably wouldn't have agreed with.
The Jewish people have been working with this text for quite some time, and they're all like modern languages. There are remnants of like ancient Hebrew. Am I correct?
Yeah, you can. The Bible is not the only example of classical Hebrew.
Right. Okay, so there you go. Right, like it's not impossible to get down there and try to translate stuff. It's just.
Yep.
Which is why it's kind of silly. And as a last closer on this, John Walton, theistic evolutionist guy who's published a lot of work on and stuff like that, and you can disagree with him or hate him or whatever, as some people do. But one thing that I think he said in I think it was the Lost World of Genesis was, I and I bring this up whenever I can because I think it's important to keep in mind. It's like a language is hard enough to interpret, but a culture is even harder.
Yeah.
Especially when you're at time. And that's what we're dealing with when we're trying to interpret Genesis 1.
Yep. All right. Well, Erika, what is up with your channel? What do you got coming up?
Well, I got a lot of stuff going on, Dapper. I do. I got a lot of stuff going on.
I noticed that.
At some point this week, Danny's coming on. We're going to discuss, we're reading a book called Philosophy of Biology, kind of at the same time. He sent it to me. We're going to be going over chapter 1 and just having some banter, and we might open up the room if it's live. I don't know if he wants to do it live yet or not. And then on Thursday, I've got a Proboscidean bite-sized bust, which is more like a man-sized bust.
Ooh.
And it's white. It's quite long.
Puns.
But I'm still... yeah, there's a lot of puns in it. And then on Friday, I've got Science in Motion. We're covering a recent April 9th, this past of 2021 paper on the primitive brain of early Homo. And then next week, I've got another Science in Motion coming out that is going over 2 recent papers, one from April, one from May, one from March, one from April, that discuss the evolution of human sweating capacity and our water efficiency, our water turnover efficiency. So those will both be pretty cool, and then hopefully I'll get a bite-sized bust out next week. I might do some open mic thing on Monday. A lot of stuff. I've suddenly got all this time I don't know what to do with because of my... and I don't get the key to my lab, quote unquote, if that's really... I'm kind of intimidated by the whole prospect for my PhD until midsummer. I have to kind of start preparing for that. But for right now, I've got nothing but time.
All right. Well, let's see. First, I'm going to answer a quick question from Don Giovanni, who says, why do people use the Greek names for the first 5 books of Moses? So that's the Pentateuch or the Torah. There's actually a reason for that. So one of the things you got to remember is that the majority of Western scholarship of the Bible comes from Christian sources, right? So while, Jewish scholars were always studying the Bible the entire time, the modern biblical scholarship that you get in academic circles ultimately, historically traces back to Christian scholarship, even though now it is no longer dominated simply by religious Christians. There are non-Christian biblical scholars all over the field. But in Christian history, for a very long time, the quote-unquote official, or at least the default version of the Old Testament that was being read, was actually not any Hebrew version. It certainly wasn't the Masoretic text, which is now frequently used, even in Christian circles. It was actually the Septuagint, which is a Greek translation of the Old Testament. And so, for that reason, basically from the beginning of Christianity, it was traditional to use the Greek texts for all of those books, and thereby to use the Greek titles for those books. And that tradition hung on when the Vulgate was translated, and so you still get sort of Latinized versions of the Greek titles for these books, because that's how they were already referred to in the Latin-speaking world. Because even at the time, Latin speakers, if they wanted to read the scriptures, generally read them in Greek. So, there you go. So that is why, the Old Testament tends to be referred to with Greek names in terms of the Torah. And as far as what my channel is up to, Thursday, there's going to be a video about spirit science. Spirit Science did a video doing a crazy and very credulous deep dive into extraterrestrial conspiracy theories. And so I have started a 3-part series on that. So yeah, day after tomorrow, the first part will come out. The second part is already uploaded. If you're a channel member or a patron, you have access to it. And if you would like access to it, just become one of those. Next Tuesday should be Kent with Bent. I don't currently have anything planned for my Saturday slot, which is always an optional slot anyway. Although I do have someone I was talking to earlier today about doing a Leaving on Earth Creationism. He might not be able to do one on Saturday, so we might end up doing it on like a Monday or something. So you might have back-to-back stream days. I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you everyone for coming. I want to say a special thank you to everyone who helped support the channel by liking, as well as who helped by super chatting, which includes Vandali1998, Mr. Wilford, Carrie Bronson, and Maya Atkinson. Thank you very much for your support. It really does. Every single dollar really does add up. So thank you very much. With that, I will see all of you guys later. Erika, say goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye, my gentle and modern apes. Thank you for being here.
I want to take a little time to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 or more. Bob Knob, Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, Patrick Dennis, and Res Instance. YouTube is a very volatile platform, what with fraudulent copyright claims, demonetization, and the ever-decreasing share of ad revenue on the platform. It is very hard to rely on YouTube. My members and patrons help keep this channel going, and without them, the channel wouldn't exist. If you'd like to join my Patreon, the link is in the description, and if you'd like to become a channel member, that link is below the video. It's the join button here on YouTube. Either way, you'll get access to early videos, an exclusive Discord server, and if you pledge enough, 3D assets you can use in your own projects.